by the research of Nikola Tesla, the great Serbian genius who gave us the 20th century. I was just animated by the search for his secrets that were never published.
He was the man who lit the world, then vanished from it. While Edison got the credit, Nikola Tesla was quietly building machines that could wirelessly power cities, move ships without fuel, and even control drones in the 1880s. Most of his inventions were buried, stolen, or erased, until now. Because what a group of engineers just rebuilt in a remote garage will leave you absolutely stunned when you see what it does. Introduction to Tesla's vision. Nikola Tesla wasn't born for the time he lived in. He wasn't even born for ours. He belonged to a future so radical, so unshaped by profit and power, that it made the world around him uncomfortable. While people were busy wrapping copper wires around cities and applauding Edison for lighting up buildings one street at a time, Tesla was off in his own world, building a system that needed no wires at all. A system that used the earth, the sky, and the very space in between as the highway for energy. To most, this sounded like magic, but to Tesla, it was science waiting to be understood. And Tesla wasn't trying to keep this vision to himself. He was ready to teach it to the world. His idea? Wireless energy. But that belief didn't come from nowhere. Tesla arrived in New York in 1884 with a suitcase full of sketches, calculations, and a single goal: to get Thomas Edison's backing for his invention, an alternating current motor system. He believed AC was the future. Edison didn't. Edison was deeply invested in the direct current system, which was inefficient, limited in range, and required stations every few city blocks. But it was his, and he wasn't about to pivot. Instead of backing Tesla's AC dream, Edison had him redesign a DC power plant on Pearl Street in Lower Manhattan. That was the first crack in their working relationship. The second came fast, a financial dispute that left Tesla unpaid and disillusioned. The two parted ways, and the war of currents began. Then came George Westinghouse. Westinghouse saw something in Tesla that Edison had ignored, a man not just inventing machines, but reshaping how the world would run. He funded Tesla's AC induction motors, devices that would quietly revolutionize urban life. They didn't spark like DC motors. They didn't need expensive permanent magnets. They worked on a clean, efficient, rotating magnetic field, the same basic principle still powering most electric motors today. By 1896, Tesla had designed the hydroelectric system at Niagara Falls. Water turned to power. Power lit up cities. A sea had won. Edison may have had the headlines, but Tesla had the legacy. Their clash would eventually inspire a film decades later, The Current War, with Tesla's quiet genius finally taking center stage. But Tesla didn't stop with motors or power plants. That wasn't enough. From 1892 through 1894, he worked on what he called an oscillator, a system capable of converting electricity into high-frequency radio waves. He was testing the foundation of radio before the world even had a word for it. Sound, signals, energy, all carried invisibly over long distances. He wasn't just thinking about communication, he was thinking about transmission, energy broadcast across the planet wirelessly. By the time the calendar flipped to 1899, he took that vision to Colorado Springs. High altitudes, dry air. What happened next still gives historians chills. During one of his experiments, Tesla managed to wirelessly power 200 light bulbs from more than 25 miles away, using nothing but the earth as the conductor. No transmission lines, no power grid, just tuned frequencies and raw intellect. People nearby started hearing strange hums. Some said they saw arcs of light shooting across the ground. A few swore the skies above Tesla's lab pulsed with electric storms that came out of nowhere. The townspeople didn't know what they were witnessing, only that it didn't look like anything they had seen before. Tesla was lighting up bulbs from miles away, and in doing so, He was lighting up the future. And yet, the applause never came. Because the truth is, most of the world didn't want what he was offering. They weren't ready. Tesla was brilliant, yes, but that brilliance made him dangerous. Not to the people, to the corporations, to the titans of industry who had just spent fortunes building power plants, wiring cities, and locking energy behind price tags. Tesla's ideas didn't fit into their model. They couldn't be bottled, taxed, or metered. He wasn't selling energy. He wanted to give it away. And in the world of capital, nothing is more threatening than a gift. Even still, Tesla didn't flinch. He pressed forward like a man possessed, his notebooks filled with ideas not just for energy, but for a society liberated by it. He imagined cities without pollution, vehicles that never needed refueling, machines powered from the ground they stood on. In every wild blueprint and every sleepless night, Tesla believed that the future belonged to him, not because he claimed it, but because he had already seen it. And that future? It had a name, the Wardenclyffe Tower. But before we get into that, if you haven't already clicked that like and subscribe, go ahead and do it now. The Wardenclyffe Tower. The Wardenclyffe Tower rose like a giant exclamation point over the coastline of Long Island. In 1901, construction began on what would become Tesla's most ambitious and misunderstood project, the Wardenclyffe Tower. Standing 187 feet tall, topped with a copper dome nearly as wide as a house, the tower looked less like a radio antenna and more like something out of another planet's blueprint. The tower wasn't built to send messages. It was built to send power. Across oceans, through continents, wirelessly. It would take electricity from a central source, pulse it through the ground using metal rods and underground chambers, and allow anyone, anywhere, to access that power so long as they were tuned to the right frequency. Think of it like radio, but instead of picking up sound, your home would pick up power. He called it the World Wireless System, and he meant every word. At first, people listened. J.P. Morgan, one of the biggest bankers of the era, backed Tesla with $150,000, a fortune in those days. He believed in Tesla's ability to revolutionize communication. But that belief had a limit. Because when Morgan asked the now infamous question, "Where do I put the meter?" the illusion cracked. Morgan wasn't funding a revolution. He was funding a product. And once he realized there was no meter, no price tag, no way to control or profit from this new kind of power, the support dried up overnight. Tesla's funding was cut. His reputation was poisoned. And yet, the tower continued to rise. Locals began reporting strange occurrences, radios picking up ghost signals, odd vibrations in the ground, bursts of light without a storm in sight. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the tower could shoot energy across the Atlantic. Others whispered about death rays and government surveillance. The military, according to scattered reports, started keeping a close watch on the site. And then, just like that, it was over. The tower was never fully completed. By 1917, it was torn down. Tesla was bankrupt. His dreams scattered like the blueprints that once lined the walls of his lab. Even after Wardenclyffe crumbled, Tesla never let go of the vision. His health declined, his resources dried up. But in hotel rooms across New York City, he kept scribbling. Formulas, frequencies, sketches of machines that could hum with the same invisible power he once sent through the soil of Colorado. The world stopped listening, but Tesla never stopped transmitting. Abandonment and obscurity. After the fall of Wardenclyffe, Tesla's life slipped into something quieter, something that felt like exile, but wasn't forced, not officially. He wasn't banished by law, but by indifference. The man who once electrified the World's Fair and stunned scientists by lighting lamps with no wires, no fuel, no flame, had become a ghost with a name too big to erase, yet too inconvenient to mention. By the early 1900s, Tesla was drifting, not just financially, but through a world that no longer saw him. He lived alone, mostly in hotel rooms, often paid for by sympathetic friends or delayed patents. His meals were small. His days were spent feeding pigeons and filling notebooks with ideas that would never see daylight. The press called him eccentric. Investors called him unstable. But Tesla wasn't broken. He was boxed out. And the box was labeled too disruptive to be real. Every time he reached out with a new pitch, a new version of his energy system, the doors stayed closed. The world had moved on. It had chosen fossil fuels. It had chosen profit. It had chosen convenience. And Tesla, the man who tried to give it something better, was reduced to folklore. When he died on January 7, 1943, in room 332 of the New Yorker Hotel, he was alone. No crowds, no fanfare, just a final breath and a silence that the world mistook for an ending. But the silence didn't last. Within hours of his death, something strange happened. Federal agents swept into the room. Tesla's documents, his notes, blueprints, unfinished devices, were seized under the pretense of national security. Some of it would eventually be returned to his family. Some of it would make its way into archives. But large pieces of Tesla's work? They vanished. No trail, no access, no explanation. And that's where the mystery truly began. Because the idea that Tesla failed wasn't entirely true. He may have lost the tower, the funding, the spotlight, but he didn't lose the science. It was still there, buried in formulas and sketches and theoretical machines. The only difference now was that no one wanted to talk about it. But a century is a long time to bury something. Modern reconstruction. The 21st century brought with it a strange reversal. As energy costs spiked, as fossil fuels fell out of favor, and as climate change turned into a global panic rather than a scientific debate, people began to look backward, not for nostalgia, but for answers. And in the rear view of history, one name refused to fade: Tesla. His ideas, once considered too wild for textbooks, began showing up in YouTube videos, open-source forums, and DIY engineering blogs. And it wasn't just theory anymore. People were building, experimenting, tinkering with rotors and magnets, trying to recreate the dream of wireless clean energy. And at the center of that movement, quietly gaining momentum, was a single device: the Liberty Engine. This wasn't a polished product from a giant tech firm. It didn't arrive at a trade show with marketing teams and media buzz. No, it came from garages, from backyards, from the hands of engineers who still believed in what Tesla tried to do. They weren't following schematics from a corporation. They were following fragments, leaked notes, cryptic patents, decades-old interviews. And somehow, through the noise, they started to hear what Tesla was trying to say. Engineers used Tesla's core principles, resonance, inductive coupling, and magnetic feedback, but fused them with modern materials. Instead of a massive copper dome, they used compact neodymium magnets, salvaged microwave transformer coils, and lightweight aluminum-silver alloy rotors. It looked modest, almost like a science fair project, until it was turned on. At first, only a few people noticed. Small YouTube channels uploaded videos showing a strange little machine powering lights and tools with no visible power source. The comments were filled with doubt, then awe, then conspiracy. Was this real? How was it working? Where was the power coming from? Then came the teardown videos, uncut, no edits, just hands disassembling every piece, showing every wire, every coil, every magnet. There were no batteries, no secret fuel compartments, just a spinning rotor, a humming coil, and output. Real, usable electricity, measured with everyday meters. The output was consistent, 230 volts alternating current, the same used in millions of homes worldwide. And it wasn't a fluke. Tests were repeated. Independent builders recreated the design using different materials, And while not all versions worked, many did. The key was precision. Tuning the coils, adjusting the magnetic spacing, reducing resistance to a whisper. When done right, the results were undeniable. Power, off-grid, clean, and wire-free. It didn't match traditional physics, at least not perfectly. Some labeled it a hoax. Others accused the builders of trickery. But those who dug deeper saw something else, echoes of Tesla's original theories. Not perpetual motion, not magic. Just a form of energy we hadn't fully understood. Just like Tesla always claimed. As the Liberty engine gained attention, whispers began again. This time, not about Tesla's sanity, but about the silence. Why wasn't this on the news? Why weren't universities lining up to test it? Why were some patents quietly denied or classified, or held up in endless legal loops? The parallels were impossible to ignore. Tesla showed them more than 80 years ago, and now someone was showing them again. But this time, people were watching. So, let's break down how it worked. Not in wild, speculative language, but in the principles Tesla himself believed in. Demonstration of functionality. The Liberty engine used what's known as resonant inductive coupling. That's the same principle behind how wireless phone chargers work. When two coils resonate at the same frequency, energy can be transferred through the air between them. But what Tesla and these modern engineers did was scale it up and refine it. Instead of tiny copper spirals charging a phone over a few centimeters, they created tuned coils that could throw power across meters of open space. The key was resonance, like hitting one bell and watching another across the room vibrate in perfect harmony. The Liberty engine used this trick, with perfectly spaced magnetic pulses, to push energy from its spinning rotor into nearby fields of wire, and because those coils were precisely tuned, there was almost no energy loss, no heat, no buzzing, just clean transfer. That's where the magic, or rather the math, happened. The engine's rotor, crafted from a silver-aluminum alloy, wasn't chosen just for looks. This blend was engineered to cut down on something called eddy currents, little loops of electrical resistance that normally eat up energy in systems like this. By using a high-purity alloy and resin-locking the components to eliminate vibration, the Liberty team slashed their energy loss so much that the rotor barely even got warm during operation. And then came the controversial part. Some viewers, especially seasoned engineers, pointed to the ratio of output to input and started throwing around a term, over-unity. That's the scientific third rail, the claim that a machine produces more energy than it consumes. Mainstream physics says that's impossible, a violation of the first law of thermodynamics. Energy in must equal energy out, always, no exceptions. But Tesla had once questioned that law himself, not because he believed in magic, but because he believed we hadn't yet mapped all the forces at play. He spoke often of radiant energy, a kind of ambient, omnipresent field that surrounded the Earth, invisible but always available to those who could tap into it. And now, over 80 years later, the Liberty engine was either accidentally or intentionally dancing around that very concept. Skeptics wanted proof, so the engineers gave them more tests. In another demonstration, the engine was set up next to a concrete wall over 1 foot thick. On the other side, a row of tools, lights, and devices. The engine ran, untouched, and within seconds, power started pulsing through the barrier like it wasn't even there. The wall didn't block the signal. It didn't absorb the energy. The Liberty engine delivered power through solid material, a feat most engineers still find hard to explain. The core of the machine wasn't some miracle of modern science. It was scrap. Old parts, rusted coils, magnets ripped from microwaves. And yet, there was something about how it was all put together. An eerie precision. Every component aligned with the kind of obsessive care Tesla once poured into faded blueprints and hotel napkin sketches. That's what made this hit differently. This wasn't some billion-dollar tech from a Zurich lab. It was dust, sweat, and forgotten knowledge, reborn. Modern controversy. And yet, even with these demonstrations, the response from the world's energy giants was a loud and calculated nothing. No outreach, no public challenge. Then things started vanishing. Blueprints disappeared from forums, full threads wiped, years of testing, logs, schematics, gone. Users were shadow banned, messages undelivered. In some cases, devices used to film the builds were remotely bricked, cameras dead, phones stuck in endless boot loops, no error codes, just silence. At first, it looked random. Tech glitch? Bad luck. But then the whispers started. Engineers began noticing patterns, permits pulled at the last second, conference invites suddenly retracted, emails arriving with attached NDAs from companies no one recognized, and then the patents, disappearing faster than they were submitted. One group in Eastern Europe filed an application for a non-linear inductive propulsion device. 2 months later, they got a letter. Application blocked due to undisclosed national interest concerns. No appeal, no clarification. Sound familiar? It should. Because if this machine worked, really worked, then it wasn't just about powering lights or tools. It was about breaking the grid. No more coal, no more oil, no more utility bills for something that already flows freely through the earth, the sky, and everything in between. But through all of it, the Liberty engine kept humming. 1,400 revolutions per minute, 230 volts, 20 feet of wireless power, everything accounted for. Every coil, every circuit, every pulse of invisible force. No tricks, no excuses. And that was just the start. Modern reconstruction. Because the Liberty engine wasn't designed to win an argument. It was built to replace one. At first, people thought it was just about off-grid power, a fridge here, a pump there. But the timing was surgical. We're in an age obsessed with electric vehicles, carbon neutrality, battery breakthroughs. Governments are racing to build solar farms the size of cities and EV charging networks that span nations. But what if we didn't need any of it? What if all of this, the batteries, the charging stations, the lithium mines, was just an expensive detour? Right now, EVs are the crown jewel of green progress. But nobody likes to talk about the price we're paying to build them. Lithium, nickel, cobalt, pulled from mines that scar the earth, that exploit labor, that spark geopolitical fights. And even once those metals are in your sleek, silent ride, it still needs the grid, which, let's be honest, is still running on fossil fuels in most places. The Liberty engine didn't care about any of that. It didn't need charging stations. It didn't need rare earth minerals. It didn't even need sunshine. It just spun, a quiet defiance against the whole clean tech facade. The second someone imagined it inside a car, the EV war started looking like an antique. Still, the movement kept growing. Because now, it wasn't just about one engine. It was about the idea, the possibility, the challenge. That's when one name started showing up again and again, Christian von Koenigsegg. The man who already broke the rules with camless engines, gearless drive systems, and hybrid hypercars that looked like alien technology. Now, insiders say he's working on something more. Patent filings hinted at variable frequency induction systems and field-based generators. Engineers went quiet, suppliers clammed up, and somewhere in Sweden, a prototype hypercar was reportedly seen in closed testing, one that didn't plug in, didn't refuel, and might have had a Liberty core humming under the hood. If that's true, Koenigsegg isn't just redefining speed, he's redefining power. Why pay per kilowatt when your car generates its own? Why worry about range when the engine never empties? Why lease batteries or build charging networks when you can remove the need entirely? And that kind of idea, that kind of independence, is dangerous. Because for decades, free energy has been treated like a joke, a conspiracy theory. a footnote in the story of failed inventors and snake oil dreamers. But suddenly, it's not a joke anymore. Suddenly, people are connecting Tesla's talk of radiant energy with zero-point energy, a real measured force in quantum physics. Even in a vacuum, where nothing should exist, energy remains, not theory, fact, measured through the Casimir effect. Two plates, nanometers apart, moved by invisible fluctuations in empty space. Tesla didn't have the words for it, but he knew it was there. A tribute to Wardenclyffe. Fast forward to 2012. Cartoonist and Tesla devotee Matthew Inman, better known as the Oatmeal, launched a campaign to buy the original Wardenclyffe site. His pitch? Turn it into a museum, a tribute, a living memory of Tesla's legacy. The goal was modest, but the world responded. Over $1,300,000 poured in. Elon Musk even tossed in a donation. And just like that, the land where Tesla had tried to change everything was in the hands of people who still believed he could. At first, it stayed quiet. Historical plaques, guided tours, science exhibits. But recently, something shifted. People close to the site noticed odd equipment deliveries, construction permits filed under holding companies no one could trace, security quietly doubled, and then came the whispers that maybe, just maybe, someone inside Wardenclyffe was doing more than honoring Tesla's past. They were testing his future. Could the Liberty engine be scaled? Could Wardenclyffe, the place where the dream died, be where it finally comes alive? The idea that the Earth itself could be the conduit, that wireless energy could flow across oceans, into homes, into cars, no wires, no bills, no gatekeepers. No confirmations have been made, no denials either. But if true, that would bring the story full circle. Because Tesla's vision was never about gadgets. It was about freedom, about unlocking the kind of power you don't just use, you own. He once said, "The spread of civilization may be likened to a fire. First, a feeble spark, next, a flickering flame, then a mighty blaze." The Liberty engine started as a flicker, a spark in a basement, a hum in a dusty garage. But now, it's catching, it's accelerating, it's leaping from one build to another, from one country to the next. And when power becomes free, so do the people who hold it. So now the real question isn't if the Liberty engine works. It's this: who's ready to let it burn? And what would happen if energy really became free? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, make sure you're subscribed. The next discovery might just rewrite history again.